Welcome once again to this edition of Capital Dateline. Peter Schorsch, Brian Burgess, thank you guys for joining us.
We're in real life. We're not online right now. We actually have pants on.
I can't believe it. Here in the flesh. Okay. Well, now that people know what you look like, they'll start hunting you down. So I'm not sure if this is good or bad. But let's jump into it. So online digital media. It's all the rage. It seems that's where the media consumers are moving towards. Tell us a little bit about each of your operations. Peter, let's start with you.
Well, we have a statewide presence. We've got floridapolitics.com and then a series of regional sites, St. Peter's Blog, Orlando Rising, and we've actually got a print magazine. But we have the largest reporting footprint of almost any political organization in the state. We have 16 different reporters. We did start in my mom's basement in my underwear, and we have grown it over the last 7 years by just changing the dynamics on reporting. We like to be first. We like to be, it is written for insiders as opposed to the general audience. And we also fire away. There's a lot of hard-hitting analysis. We call it like we see it. Some people don't like us the way we do call it. Brian and I have fought through the years on Twitter, but it's definitely new media. It's definitely different than 30 years ago, people working for a deadline at 6 o'clock in the afternoon, working for a newspaper.
All right, so from basement Star Wars fanatic to the leader of the free media world in Florida, and the newcomer on the scene is Brian Burgess with the Capitalist.
This guy's, he's changed the game. Peter Schorsch has changed the game in Florida politics and Florida media. And when he first started out, when I started out, I moved to Florida in 2010, late 2010, 2011. Peter was still a blogger. I mean, literally a blogger. It was St. Peter's Blog, right?
Right.
And he was still, even then, something that we had to worry about when I worked for the governor's office. We still had to worry about what he might write, but it wasn't as big of a deal then. Since that time, he's now got, as you said, 18, or having 12, 16, I don't know, a lot of reporters that he's got working for him. And he cranks out more content, more political content, than the rest of the Capitol Press Corps, I think, combined. On my website, which I'm a little baby here starting off, I can't possibly compete with him in terms of quantity, and I can't compete with him in terms of quantity. But I try to keep up in terms of selective reporting and how I sort of pick my battles. But he's I don't want to say you're an inspiration. That would be more than I want. That'd be more than I want to say, but. His model works. He's proven that it can work, and he's beating a lot of folks to the punch on breaking news. And in the past, the criticism was, oh, it's just Peter, it's just a blogger, you can ignore it. But now it's not just Peter. I mean, his reporting and his analysis. There's probably very few people who are as knowledgeable as Peter is in terms of breaking down what certain things mean. But his team is legitimate reporters, people who used to work for the Orlando Sentinel, people who used to work for other big-name publications, and there's not a whole lot you can criticize. I've talked to folks who have left his organization or who still work there, who say, he lets us run with it. He lets us report out the story, and I don't know how anybody can criticize that. Well, he's the model, and I'm just following in the wake now, trying to figure out how I'm going to sort of fill in a niche myself.
Well, on that, so what is your niche?
Well, right now, I got my political start in Cincinnati, Ohio, and there was a guy by the name of, his real name is Jim Schifrin. He was an inspiration to me, and he had a blog called The Whistleblower, and it was actually started as a fact, but it was this irreverent sort of humor and humorous take on things when he could do that, but also you had to read it because there was always little nuggets in there that were truthful or that were sort of foreshadowing for what might come. And I try to do a little bit of that while also picking certain battles that I'm passionate about. There are a lot of political topics I care a lot about. I'm conservative, and there's things I like to get into and attack, and I will do that. I don't mean in a vicious way, but as in an aggressive, digging into it sort of way.
Right. Okay, so now we got a feel for your space and where you guys are charting, but let's talk about the influence of online digital media. How do you see that playing out today in the overall spectrum of where elections go? I mean, how influential are you guys? Brian?
Well, I'll bring it back a little bit to my past as a communications person. My job in the past has been to try to get stories in the media, whether it's in the private sector or working for Florida's government. I've done other jobs where I was a public information officer. And the game has changed, and it's because of guys like Peter Schorsch and other folks where the proliferation of the digital media, it's so easy to spread. It's quick to proliferate throughout inboxes and everywhere else, and you have to deal with it because it becomes very influential very quickly, much more so than a weekly show or a weekly article or things like that. So you've got to deal with it. It's incredibly influential because decision makers see it. Decision makers make calls based on it, and they are very reactive and responsive to the stuff that gets cranked out by publications like myself and his and a few others around the state.
All right, so Peter, what's your take? You've seen it come from soup to nuts, you know.
Well, I mean, back it out and let's give credit where credit's due, especially on the presidential race. Most of the big stories have been broken by traditional newspapers. Washington Post has probably done the most. The New York Times has done very well this cycle. But I think what caused that was the new competition on the scene. And that was Politico, that was BuzzFeed. And I think we're seeing that in Florida, where over the last 2 or 3 years, because of sites like myself, News Service of Florida, and now Politico, the game has changed. There are 2 different audiences. There is a general audience, and we're never going to reach that. People will come to our site because of Facebook. They'll come to our site because of Google searches, but we're writing for 25 to 50,000 people that really love politics. We are writing for the fantasy football fan. The newspaper is writing for the NFL. That doesn't mean one is better than the other, but I do think newspapers, as they struggle with the finances, are missing out. Why are the stories breaking on St. Peter's Blog and Politico and The Capitalist? Why aren't they doubling down on their political coverage? And that's one of the things. Brian Crowley is a blogger down in South Florida. He was a newspaper guy, and he constantly writes, you know, what newspapers should learn from what we're doing. And I'm surprised again and again the business decisions by newspapers that they allow these things to happen. I don't understand why the Tallahassee Democrat doesn't have the most robust political coverage in Florida.
Yeah.
And I've written that before. They allowed Politico to come in and eat their, you know, and take control of their remote control. I don't know why they allowed that to happen. And so I think the revenue's there. Anybody that tells you that there is not an economic formula for good journalism is lying.
Right.
There might not be an economic formula for traditional newspapers, but good journalism still makes business sense. That's why who's investing in it? Bezos, Buffett, et cetera. The people that are billionaires already are buying up newspapers. They can't be, you know, that bad economically. What is not succeeding is 1960s journalism with the guy with, you know, waiting till 6 o'clock to publish a story.
Right. Okay, all right. So now we get a feel for where you guys are, the space you're operating in. Let's get down to the nitty-gritty and what you guys have become famous for. So we're going to start on the Trump-Clinton race, or probably today it's the Clinton-Trump race. And so from emails to sexual assault claims to Guccifer to WikiLeaks, what is going on in this crazy election? Tell us a little bit about it. Peter, let's start with you.
Wow, what has happened in the last hour? I almost want to check my phone to see, you know, who's come forward, what accusation has been made, what speech Trump has given. I think, you know, Trump has said that the election is rigged, and I think he's right in this sense. I think the election is over. I do think Hillary Clinton wins. I think she was always going to win. The way that demographics have changed in this country, it's very hard for a Republican to find a path to victory in the Electoral College. Trump broke up that system. I feel you want to just disagree right there. You're allowed to jump in.
I don't want to disagree. I think this was a Republican race to win. Hillary Clinton is the weakest candidate that the Democrats have fielded in a generation or two. She is imminently beatable, and unfortunately,
Turn Hubert Humphrey.
Unfortunately, Trump is. I don't know if he's fumbling the ball yet. We'll see. But right now, I don't disagree with you. It doesn't look good right now, and I think Trump's talk of.
How can you say he's not? You don't know if he's fumbling the ball. You're a Republican. I mean, do you?
Look,
not to put you on the. Do you stand by those comments that he made?
Look, I've seen. No, don't put me on the spot about his comments. I'm not going to sit
You're
here and
on the
defend.
spot.
I had Trump's name reluctantly shaved in my head. You know, I'm not going to defend him. I'm here to tell you that she was beatable, and that he has. He's failed to give Republicans a reason to vote for him. Guys like me have been sitting there watching, come on, do it, give me the reason, and he hasn't done that. He just keeps making me really nervous.
So you think Hillary wins?
I think that the way the trend line is going and the way the Electoral College is structured, I think it's her race to lose without question.
Okay, let's talk about the national elections and how they're impacting another national election, but in Florida, the Senate race. Rubio versus Marco. Any down ballot impact from Hillary on Murphy or Trump on Rubio?
Yes, yes. There's some. But here's my thing. I think last week some Republicans were about to jump out of windows all across the state because there was some reporting out there about voter registrations being incredibly lopsided in favor of Democrats, and I think that's come out since and has been corrected. I don't remember the exact cause of the error, but it was something like 500,000 votes for new voter registrations for Democrats and only 60,000 for Republicans.
But it was just a changing of the jersey. It was just
Correct.
Dixiecrats in
Correct.
North Florida who have always voted Republican, finally changing their registration over to.
So it's not nearly at the train wreck that we think, but I still think that the Democrats have traditionally done very well in terms of voter turnout the last few years, last few cycles, in Florida and elsewhere, and there's been talk of the turnout machine not being there for Republicans, and does that affect Rubio? Of course it does. Right. I don't know if it's going to be enough. I think Rubio still has the edge. 30
seconds until we go to break. Peter, talk to me a little bit about, do you think that this election will be decided by the voter registration, turnout? What decides that election?
It decides by demographics. I think right now that there's just so many Hispanic voters, Puerto Rican voters in Central Florida that have come into the state. The bankruptcy in Puerto Rico, or the economic troubles in Puerto Rico, have as much to do with Florida going to Hillary Clinton as almost anything that has happened on the campaign trail. We just haven't thought about that yet. I think also we still forget there are a lot of hurting people in places like Pasco County in North Florida. Trump still has a way to reach those people. I watched a show last night, The Circus, on Lakeland. People are hurting. They still are looking for him as a change agent no matter what.
Born during a bitter winter in Valley Forge, grew up fighting for freedom on foreign soil. People have knocked down walls for it, dreamed about it, risked their lives to get it. A little piece of America, free to anyone willing to do a job, fill a need, chase a dream, or just work hard enough to do the impossible. There are those who think the American experiment is over, that our time has come and gone. The rest of us will keep on inventing and innovating and doing what people say can't be done, because that's what we were born to do. Florida Wins urges you to protect American opportunity with the most powerful tool you have, your vote.